Captain Sarah Chen stared at the emergency beacon flashing red across her tactical display. The UDS Meridian, humanity's largest colony ship, was dying in the void between star systems. 50,000 souls aboard, families, children, elderly colonists seeking new homes among the stars. The ship's fusion core had suffered a cascade failure, leaving them stranded in the cold darkness with life support failing. How long until the rescue fleet arrives? Chen asked her communications officer aboard the flagship Terra's shield. 12 hours, Captain. Admiral Morrison is pushing the engines beyond safety limits. The entire Third Fleet is coming. Chen nodded grimly. The United Defense Force had mobilized every available ship within 3 light-years. Medical frigates, supply transports, and heavy cruisers, anything that could carry people or provide protection. This wasn't a military operation. This was humanity trying to save its own. But they weren't alone in this sector of space. Captain, her sensor operator called out, voice tight with concern. I'm detecting hegemony signatures. 3 dreadnoughts, multiple destroyer squadrons. They're holding position just outside our sensor range, but they're watching. The hegemony. 5 alien species united under military rule, controlling nearly half the galaxy's inhabited systems. They'd been testing human resolve for months, probing border systems, intercepting merchant vessels, making threatening displays of force. So far, Earth had responded with diplomacy and measured restraint. Today might be different. Sir, the communications officer spoke again. Incoming message from Hegemony High Command. Audio only. Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled with an alien voice, translated by the ship's universal systems. The tone was cold, mechanical, utterly without compassion. Human vessels, you are operating in contested space. The failed colony ship represents a navigation hazard that must be cleared. We will assist in removing this debris. Chen felt ice flood her veins. They were calling 50,000 human lives debris. Hegemony Command, she replied, keeping her voice steady. This is a humanitarian rescue operation. We are saving civilian lives. Our presence here is temporary and poses no threat to your interests. The failed vessel will be destroyed in 6 hours to clear shipping lanes. Remove your military assets immediately or face consequences. The transmission ended, leaving Chen's bridge in stunned silence. Captain, her tactical officer whispered, they can't be serious. It's a rescue mission. There are children on that ship. Chen knew the hegemony's reputation. They viewed compassion as weakness, mercy as inefficiency. To them, the struggling colonists were simply obstacles to be eliminated. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They thought humans would back down when faced with superior firepower. Get me Admiral Morrison, Chen ordered. Priority 1. Within minutes, the Admiral's weathered face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Chen could see the frantic activity of a fleet preparing for emergency operations. Captain, I assume you've heard from our hegemony friends. Yes, sir. They want us to abandon the rescue and let them destroy the Meridian. Morrison's expression hardened. In 40 years of military service, he'd never abandoned civilians. He wasn't starting now. Captain Chen, this is Admiral Morrison speaking to all ships in the rescue fleet. Our mission parameters remain unchanged. We will extract every single person from that colony ship. The hegemony wants to treat human lives as disposable cargo. They're about to learn why that's the worst mistake they could make. Chen felt a surge of fierce pride. This was humanity at its core, never leaving anyone behind, no matter the cost. Sir, they have superior numbers and firepower. 3 dreadnoughts alone could. Captain, Morrison interrupted, patch me through to Earth Command. Emergency authorization Omega Black. Chen's blood ran cold. Omega Black was the highest military alert level, reserved for existential threats to human civilization. She'd never heard it used before. Admiral, are you certain? Once Omega Black is declared. Captain, the moment they threatened to murder 50,000 civilians, this stopped being a rescue mission. This became something else entirely. As Chen watched, Morrison's face transformed from that of a career officer to something far more dangerous, a human being whose species had just been threatened. Earth Command, this is Admiral Morrison. Declaring Omega Black Protocols. The hegemony has threatened to fire on civilians during a humanitarian operation. Authorization Code 77 Alpha Delta. The response came immediately. Omega Black confirmed, Admiral. All defense fleets are mobilizing. Estimated arrival time to your position, 18 hours. Morrison turned back to Chen. Captain, we hold the line until help arrives. No matter what it takes. Chen looked at her crew, young faces, determined expressions, people who'd signed up to explore the stars and instead found themselves facing the galaxy's greatest military power to save strangers. Understood, Admiral. We'll be ready. But as Chen ended the transmission, one thought echoed in her mind. Ready for what? The first shots came without warning. Captain Chen watched in horror as 3 hegemony destroyers dropped out of hyperspace directly between her rescue fleet and the dying colony ship. Their weapons locked onto the unarmed medical frigates approaching the meridian. Hegemony vessels are charging weapons, her tactical officer reported, voice tight with disbelief. They are targeting the medical ships. Chen's finger hovered over the fleet communications switch. She could order the medical ships to withdraw, save her crews, avoid the confrontation. It would mean abandoning 50,000 civilians to die in the cold void, but her people would live. The decision was made for her. Brilliant orange beams lanced out from the hegemony destroyers, striking the medical frigate Mercer's hand. The ship's shields flared and died. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as medical supplies and rescue equipment vaporized in superheated plasma. Mercer's hand is gone, the sensor operator whispered. All hands lost. 200 medical personnel, rescue specialists, and emergency responders, vaporized in an instant for the crime of trying to save lives. Chen felt something fundamental shift inside her chest. The cold professionalism of a career officer burned away, replaced by something far more primal and dangerous. All ships, this is Captain Chen. They just murdered our medical personnel during a humanitarian mission. Combat protocols are now in effect. Protect the rescue ships at all costs. The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as her crew switched from rescue coordination to combat operations. Chen's heavy cruiser Terra's shield was built for war, but she was outnumbered 3-1 by ships designed to kill. Captain, incoming transmission from the Hegemony flagship. Put it through. The same cold, mechanical voice filled the bridge. Human vessels, you have witnessed the consequences of defying hegemony directives. Withdraw immediately or share the fate of your medical ship. Chen stood slowly, every eye on the bridge focused on her. In this moment, she wasn't just a ship captain. She was the voice of humanity itself. Hegemony Command, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Defense Force. You have just committed an act of war against the human species. You fired on unarmed medical personnel during a rescue operation. You murdered doctors, nurses, and emergency responders whose only crime was trying to save lives. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. You wanted to see how humans respond to threats? You're about to find out. Chen cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. Target their lead destroyer. Full spread, all missile tubes. Captain, our orders were to avoid engagement unless. They engaged us first, Chen said quietly. They killed our people. Now we respond. The Terror's shield shuddered as 24 ship-killer missiles erupted from her launch tubes. The Hegemony destroyer tried to maneuver, but human missiles were faster than most species expected. 16 warheads found their target, turning the enemy vessel into an expanding cloud of radioactive debris. The remaining Hegemony ships immediately opened fire on Chen's cruiser. Plasma beams and particle cannons hammered her shields while her crew fought to keep the defensive systems online. Shields at 60% and falling, her tactical officer reported through gritted teeth. Return fire. All batteries. The Terror's shield had been built by a species that learned warfare from each other. Humans who'd spent millennia perfecting the art of killing. Her weapons systems reflected that heritage. Dual particle beam arrays carved through enemy armor while missile salvos overwhelmed their point defenses. But Chen knew they couldn't win this fight alone. The hegemony had more ships arriving every minute, and her small rescue fleet was designed for search and recovery, not combat. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "emergency transmission from the Meridian. The colony ship is breaking apart. They have maybe 4 hours before total structural failure." Chen stared at the tactical display. Enemy reinforcements were arriving faster than expected. She counted 8 more destroyers and a heavy battlecruiser entering the system. Her rescue fleet was trapped between the dying colony ship and an enemy force that outnumbered them 5-1. "Captain," her sensor operator spoke urgently, "new contacts coming out of hyperspace. Multiple signatures, moving fast." Chen's heart sank. More hegemony ships would end any hope of completing the rescue. Then her sensor operator's voice changed, filled with something Chen hadn't heard in hours: hope. "Captain, they're human signatures. Admiral Morrison's Third Fleet, arriving ahead of schedule." On the tactical display, 6 to 7 human warships materialized from hyperspace in perfect formation. Heavy cruisers, destroyers, and assault carriers, every combat vessel the UDF could mobilize on short notice. Admiral Morrison's voice filled the communications channel, broadcast to every ship in the system: "All hegemony vessels, this is Admiral James Morrison commanding the Third Fleet of the United Defense Force. You have attacked human medical personnel during a humanitarian mission. You have committed murder in the eyes of every civilized species in this galaxy." The Admiral's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "You have exactly 60 seconds to withdraw from this system, or we will consider every hegemony vessel here to be a legitimate military target. This is your only warning." Chen watched the tactical display as the hegemony forces hesitated. They'd come here expecting to face a small rescue fleet, not the combined might of human military power. 60 seconds passed in tense silence. Then the hegemony battlecruiser opened fire on the nearest human destroyer. Admiral Morrison's response was immediate and devastating: "All ships, weapons free. Show them what happens when you threaten human lives." The space around the dying colony ship erupted into the largest naval battle humanity had fought since the frontier wars. Admiral Morrison's Third Fleet moved with precision that spoke of decades of training and preparation. Each ship knew its role, its target, its purpose. Captain Chen watched from the Bridge of Terror's shield as human destroyers engaged hegemony battlecruisers in deadly dance of weapons fire and evasive maneuvers. The enemy had superior individual firepower, but human tactics was something else entirely: unpredictable, adaptive, and utterly ruthless when protecting their own. "Captain, the rescue operation," her executive officer reminded her. "The Meridian is still breaking apart." Chen nodded grimly. Even in the middle of the largest space battle in recent history, 50,000 civilians were dying slowly in the cold void. The colony ship's hull was fracturing along multiple stress points, and each breach meant hundreds of lives lost to decompression. "Patch me through to Admiral Morrison." Morrison's face appeared on screen, strain visible in his weathered features as he coordinated fleet movements while plasma fire lit up the darkness around his flagship. "Captain, I need those rescue ships to reach the Meridian. Every minute we delay means more civilian casualties." "Admiral, the hegemony has positioned their remaining forces directly between us and the colony ship. They're using the civilians as shields." Morrison's expression darkened. "They're gambling that we won't risk civilian lives to win this fight. They still don't understand what they're dealing with." As if summoned by his words, a priority transmission reached the fleet from Earth itself. The blue and white marble of humanity's homeworld appeared on every ship's communication screen, with Fleet Admiral Catherine Reyes speaking from the Admiralty's war room. "All vessels, this is Fleet Admiral Reyes with direct orders from the Global Defense Council and the President. The attack on our medical personnel has been classified as an act of genocide under the Terran War Crimes Statute. You are authorized to use any and all necessary force to complete the rescue mission and neutralize the hegemony threat." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. The Terran War Crimes Statute hadn't been invoked since the colony massacres of 2387. When humans designated something as genocide, The gloves came off completely. Admiral Morrison, Reyes continued, "You are hereby granted access to classified Arsenal Omega. Authorization code, Olympus 77. Chen saw Morrison's face go pale. Arsenal Omega, weapons so devastating that their very existence was classified at the highest levels of government. She'd heard rumors, whispers in officer clubs about human weapons research, but never believed the stories were true. Understood, Fleet Admiral. Arsenal Omega authorized." As Morrison ended the transmission, Chen watched 3 ships she'd never seen before drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They were sleek, black, and completely unlike any human vessel in active service. No markings, no identification codes, just deadly purpose wrapped in stealth composite armor. "Captain," her sensor operator called out, voice filled with confusion, "those new arrivals. I can barely detect them. Their signatures are almost ghost-like." The 3 mystery ships moved through the battle zone like shadows, invisible to enemy sensors until they were already past the hegemony defensive lines. Chen watched in fascination as they approached the enemy flagship, a massive dreadnought that had been directing the alien fleet's movements. What happened next defied everything Chen thought she knew about space warfare. The lead mystery ship simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not jumping to hyperspace. It vanished from all sensors completely. Seconds later, the hegemony dreadnought's forward section erupted in a series of internal explosions that tore the massive vessel apart from the inside. "How?" Chen whispered. "How is that possible?" Her answer came from Admiral Morrison's tactical officer, broadcasting on the fleet command frequency, dimensional phase technology. The shadow ships can shift partially out of normal spacetime, pass through solid matter, then rematerialize inside enemy hulls. Chen stared at the tactical display as the remaining 2 shadow ships repeated the impossible maneuver, appearing inside hegemony vessels and destroying them from within. In less than 10 minutes, the enemy's command structure was completely eliminated. But the cost was mounting on both sides. Chen counted 8 human destroyers gone, their crews sacrificed to protect the rescue ships. Each loss meant hundreds of her fellow humans dead, people who'd volunteered to serve, to explore, to defend humanity's place among the stars. "Captain," her communications officer reported, "the Meridian is attempting to reach us." The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the dying colony ship. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red shadows while debris floated in zero gravity. A young woman in a torn civilian jumpsuit looked directly into the camera, her face streaked with tears and determination. "This is Maria Santos, Acting Communications Officer for Colony Transport Meridian. We have 4,000 to 7,000 people still alive, but we're losing hull integrity faster than expected. Our children. Please, if anyone can hear this, we have 8,000 children aboard." Chen felt her hands clench into fists. 8,000 children, trapped and dying while alien warships used them as human shields. "Admiral," she said into her communicator, "request permission to break through the enemy lines. We can punch a hole for the rescue ships." "Captain, that's suicide. The hegemony has concentrated their remaining forces around the colony ship. Your cruiser can't survive that kind of firepower." Chen looked around her bridge at faces she'd served with for 5 years. Her tactical officer, barely 25 and engaged to be married next month. Her executive officer, who'd joined the service to pay for his daughter's education. Her communications specialist, who sent poetry to her girlfriend on Mars every week. All of them nodded when she looked their way. "Admiral, respectfully, we didn't join the defense force to play it safe. We joined to protect human lives. Those children need us, and we're going to get them out." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of command and the burden of sending good people to die. "Captain Chen, take your ship and break their lines. The entire fleet will support your run. Bring those people home." Chen stood and looked at her crew one final time. "All hands, this is the captain. We're going to save those children, no matter what it costs." The Terror's shield accelerated toward the hegemony defensive line at maximum thrust, her hull groaning under forces that pushed both ship and crew to their absolute limits. Captain Chen gripped her command chair as enemy fire began to concentrate on her cruiser, the obvious threat trying to break through their carefully constructed barrier. Incoming fire from multiple vectors, her tactical officer reported with professional calm even as the ship shuddered under plasma impacts. Shields at 40% and falling. Chen watched the tactical display as Admiral Morrison's fleet moved to support her desperate run. Human destroyers peeled off from their own engagements to draw enemy fire, sacrificing themselves to give her a chance. The destroyer Defiant exploded in a brilliant flash as 3 hegemony battlecruisers focused their fire on it, but not before its missiles found their target and crippled one of the alien vessels. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "transmission from the colony ship. They're reporting massive structural failure in Section C. They're losing people fast." On the screen, Maria Santos appeared again, this time floating in what was clearly a damaged corridor with sparks flying from broken conduits behind her. "Please hurry," she whispered. "The children's compartments are near Section C. We're trying to evacuate them, but the corridors are collapsing." Chen felt something break inside her chest. They were so close, less than 50,000 kilometers from the dying ship, but the remaining hegemony forces were positioned perfectly to stop any rescue attempt. "All batteries, focus fire on the lead battlecruiser," she ordered. "We punch through their line or we die trying." The Terror's shield unleashed everything she had. Particle beams, missile salvos, and kinetic penetrators, a focused barrage that hammered the enemy vessel's shields until they finally collapsed. But return fire was devastating. Chen's ship lost her forward weapons array, 2 engine nacelles, and most of her defensive systems in the space of 30 seconds. "Captain, we can't take much more of this," her executive officer reported as damage alarms screamed throughout the bridge. "Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. We're losing atmosphere." That's when Chen heard something that changed everything. A sound that made her heart race with hope instead of fear. The distinctive harmonic resonance of human hyperspace engines, but not from any ship she recognized. "Captain," her sensor operator's voice was filled with awe, "massive hyperspace signatures incoming. I count. God in heaven, I count over 300 ships." Chen looked at the tactical display and felt her breath catch. The entire home fleet, every major warship defending Earth itself, was dropping out of hyperspace in perfect battle formation. Dreadnoughts, assault carriers, and heavy battlecruisers, ships so powerful they could crack planets. But leading them was something Chen had only seen in historical archives: the UDS Retribution, humanity's first and only superdreadnought. A ship so large and deadly that its construction had been kept secret from the rest of the galaxy for decades. Admiral Helena Cross's voice filled every communication channel in the system, broadcast on frequencies that would reach every corner of inhabited space. "Attention all hegemony forces. This is Admiral Cross commanding the Sol Home Fleet. You have attacked human civilians during a rescue operation. You have murdered medical personnel. You have threatened children." The massive superdreadnought moved through the battle zone like an apex predator, her weapons systems powering up with energy readings that made Chen's instruments scream warnings. "Under the authority of the Terran Defense Charter and the Human Rights Accords, I am declaring this system under martial law. Any vessel that does not immediately surrender will be destroyed without quarter. You have 60 seconds to comply." Chen watched as hegemony ships throughout the system began to retreat, but not fast enough. The Retribution opened fire with weapons that defied conventional understanding. Beams of coherent energy that could punch through moon-sized asteroids struck enemy dreadnoughts and simply erased them from existence. "Captain," her communications officer whispered, "the hegemony flagship is transmitting a surrender signal." But Admiral Cross's response was immediate and final: "Surrender denied. You fired on rescue ships. You threatened children. There are no acceptable terms." The home fleet moved through the remaining hegemony forces like an unstoppable wave. Decades of human military engineering, refined by a species that had learned warfare from each other, unleashed against aliens who thought superior numbers meant inevitable victory. Chen used the distraction to push her damaged cruiser toward the colony ship. The Meridian was breaking apart faster now, whole sections spinning away into the void with their precious human cargo. All rescue ships, this is Captain Chen. Move to extract survivors now. We have a clear path. Medical frigates and transport ships swarmed around the dying colony vessel like worker bees, their crews performing miracles of coordination and bravery. Docking tubes extended to damaged hull sections, emergency teleporters locked onto life signs, and shuttlecraft braved debris fields to reach trapped civilians. Captain Maria Santos appeared on screen one final time. We're getting reports that the children's sections are secure. They're being evacuated now. Chen felt tears stream down her face as she watched the rescue operation unfold. 4,000 to 7,000 people pulled from the jaws of death by crews who risked everything to save strangers. But the battle wasn't over. Captain, her tactical officer reported grimly, long-range sensors are detecting massive hegemony reinforcements. Their entire second armada is heading this way. Over 800 ships. Chen looked at Admiral Cross's superdreadnought and wondered if even humanity's most powerful fleet could stand against those numbers. That's when she received a transmission that changed everything she thought she knew about her own species. All vessels, this is Fleet Admiral Reyes transmitting from Earth Command. The Global Defense Council has voted unanimously to invoke Protocol 7. Chen felt ice flood her veins. Protocol 7, the final option, reserved for threats to human survival itself. All human fleets in all sectors are hereby recalled to active combat status. Every ship, every crew, every weapon in human space is now committed to this engagement. We are implementing total war doctrine. Chen stared at her tactical display as it began to fill with new contacts. Ships from every human colony, every defense station, every exploration fleet. Humanity was gathering its full strength for the first time in generations. The hegemony wanted to test human resolve. They were about to face something no alien species had ever seen. Humanity united in total war. The rescue of the Meridian survivors was completed in 4 hours, but the evacuation of civilian populations throughout human space took 3 days. Admiral Cross's home fleet maintained a defensive perimeter around the rescue ships while the largest military mobilization in human history gathered momentum across the galaxy. Captain Chen stood on the observation deck of the medical station Haven's Rest, watching as the last shuttle from the colony ship docked safely. 4,000 to 7,000 survivors, families, children, elderly colonists, all safe because humanity had refused to abandon them. Maria Santos approached her, no longer wearing a torn jumpsuit but clean medical scrubs provided by the rescue teams. The young woman's eyes still held the haunted look of someone who'd faced death in the cold void, but her voice was steady. Captain, I wanted to thank you. All of you. When those alien ships started shooting at the medical vessels, I thought we were all going to die forgotten in deep space. Chen shook her head. No human dies forgotten, Maria. That's what makes us who we are. Through the observation window, Chen could see the massive buildup of human military forces. Ships from every sector, every colony, every frontier outpost. Over 2,000 vessels representing the full might of human civilization. But more impressive than the numbers was the unity. Chen watched as colonial militia ships took positions alongside elite home fleet dreadnoughts. Merchant marine captains coordinated with academy graduates. Veteran spacers worked beside fresh recruits who'd never seen combat. The hegemony had tried to exploit what they saw as human weakness, compassion for civilians, unwillingness to abandon the helpless. Instead, they'd awakened something that had been dormant since humanity's early expansion into space. The species' absolute refusal to accept extinction. Captain, her communications officer approached with a secure tablet. Priority transmission from Admiral Cross. Eyes only. Chen took the device and moved to a private alcove. Admiral Cross's face appeared on the screen, her expression grim but determined. Captain Chen, I'm uploading classified intelligence reports. The hegemony's second armada isn't just coming to avenge their losses here. Our deep space reconnaissance assets have detected massive troop movements throughout their territory. They're mobilizing for a full-scale invasion of human space. Chen felt her blood turn to ice. Admiral, our colonies are being evacuated as we speak. Every civilian population within 50 light-years of hegemony space is being relocated to secure sectors. But Captain, that's not why I'm contacting you. Cross leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. The Defense Council has authorized something that hasn't been used since the Colony Wars. Project Deep Strike. Chen had never heard the name, but something about the way Cross said it made her skin crawl. Captain, we've spent the last 30 years developing weapons and tactics for a scenario exactly like this. Total war against a superior enemy force. Deep Strike isn't just about winning battles. It's about making sure no one ever threatens human civilians again. The tablet displayed technical specifications that made Chen's head spin. Weapons that could destabilize stars, ships that could phase in and out of normal spacetime, tactical systems that treated entire planets as acceptable casualties. Admiral, some of these technologies, if we use them, we become the monsters. Cross was quiet for a long moment. Captain, do you know what the hegemony calls us in their military reports? The plague species. They believe human expansion will eventually consume the entire galaxy, that our compassion is a mask hiding an insatiably aggressive nature. Chen stared at the specifications. Humanity had built weapons capable of committing genocide on a galactic scale. They are not entirely wrong, Cross continued. When pushed to the brink, when our civilians are threatened, humans become capable of terrible things. The question is whether we're willing to become terrible to protect the innocent. Before Chen could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the medical station. Her tactical officer's voice came over the general communications system, all personnel to combat stations. Hegemony's Second Armada has arrived in system. 837 vessels detected. Chen rushed back to the observation deck, where she could see the enemy fleet materializing from hyperspace in a formation that stretched across millions of kilometers. Dreadnoughts, battlecruisers, assault carriers, enough firepower to sterilize entire worlds. But humanity was ready. Admiral Cross's voice filled every communication channel. All human vessels. This is Admiral Cross commanding combined fleet operations. The enemy has come to our doorstep with the intention of destroying human civilization. They chose to fire on rescue ships. They chose to threaten children. They chose this war. Chen watched as the human fleet moved into battle formation. Not the defensive screen she expected, but an aggressive spearhead formation designed for maximum penetration of enemy lines. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten human lives. Today, we demonstrate why compassion and strength are not opposites, but the two sides of the same weapon. All ships, weapons free. Let's end this. The largest space battle in galactic history began with a single shot from the superdreadnought Retribution. Her main gun, a weapon that channeled the power of a small star, reached across space and simply vaporized the hegemony flagship before it could even raise its shields. But what followed was unlike any battle Chen had ever imagined. The human fleet didn't just fight. It demonstrated technologies that defied conventional understanding of warfare. Ships that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Weapons that struck through folded space-time. Tactical systems that coordinated thousands of vessels with inhuman precision. Captain, Maria Santos appeared beside her, voice filled with awe and terror. What are we? Chen watched as human ships tore through enemy formations with ruthless efficiency, and realized that the young colonist had asked the most important question of all. What had humanity become in its determination to protect its own? The answer was spreading across space in beams of coherent energy and cascading explosions as the hegemony discovered why no species in galactic history had ever succeeded in threatening human civilians. They weren't fighting just ships or weapons or tactics. They were fighting the collective will of a species that had looked into the abyss of extinction and decided to become the abyss instead. The Battle of Meridian lasted 18 hours and redefined warfare for every species in the galaxy. When the fighting ended, the hegemony's Second Armada had been completely destroyed, 837 vessels reduced to debris and radiation. Human losses numbered 43 ships, each one mourned but accepted as the price of protecting innocent lives. Captain Chen stood in the command center of the superdreadnought Retribution, watching as Admiral Cross coordinated the aftermath of humanity's most decisive military victory. But victory felt hollow when Chen looked at the tactical displays showing the true scope of human capabilities. "Admiral," she said quietly, "the weapons we use today, half the galaxy saw what we're capable of. They're going to be terrified of us." Cross nodded grimly. "Captain, we've crossed a line. For 30 years, we've played the role of peaceful explorers, reluctant warriors who only fought when necessary. Today, we showed our true nature." Through the observation windows, Chen could see the rescue ships completing their mission. 4,000 to 7,000 civilians from the Meridian, now safe aboard medical stations and transport vessels. Every single life saved, protected by a display of force that would echo through galactic history. "Sir," the Retribution's communications officer approached. "Incoming transmission from Hegemony High Command. They're requesting terms for surrender." Cross and Chen exchanged glances. The mighty Hegemony, rulers of half the galaxy, were asking for mercy from the species they dismissed as weak and sentimental. "Put them through," Cross ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what was clearly a damaged command center. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across alien faces that Chen recognized from intelligence briefings. The Hegemony's Supreme Council, their expressions a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "Human commanders," the lead alien spoke in translated basic, "we formally request cessation of hostilities. The attack on your rescue vessels was an error in judgment. We seek terms for peace." Admiral Cross was quiet for a long moment, letting the weight of human power settle in the silence between stars. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the authority of a species that had just proven its willingness to fight total war for its values. "Hegemony Council, your forces fired on medical ships during a humanitarian rescue operation. You murdered doctors, nurses, and emergency responders. You threatened children. These are acts that human civilization cannot and will not tolerate." Chen watched the alien leaders' faces as Cross continued, her tone growing colder with each word. "However, we are not you. We do not massacre civilians or destroy entire species out of convenience. Our terms are simple and non-negotiable." The tactical display shifted to show star charts of Hegemony space, with specific systems highlighted in red. First, immediate withdrawal of all Hegemony forces from the contested sectors. Second, reparations to be paid to the families of personnel killed in your unprovoked attack. Third, establishment of permanent humanitarian corridors. Any species requesting rescue or emergency aid will be allowed safe passage through your territory. Chen felt a surge of pride. Even in total victory, humanity was demanding the right to save lives, not to conquer territory. And finally, Cross concluded, formal recognition that attacks on human civilians or humanitarian operations will result in immediate and total military response. "You have seen what we are capable of when protecting our own. Do not test our resolve again." The Hegemony Council conferred among themselves in rapid, untranslated speech. Fear was evident in their body language, the casual arrogance of a galactic superpower replaced by the desperate calculation of a defeated enemy. "We accept your terms," the lead alien finally said. "But we must ask, what assurance do we have that humanity will not use these weapons against other species? Your capabilities today were unexpected." Admiral Cross smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Council members, you have our word that human forces will only use maximum force when protecting innocent lives. But understand this clearly. We have just demonstrated that we possess the means to end any civilization that threatens our people. This power comes with the responsibility to protect not just humans, but any species that shares our values of protecting the helpless." Chen realized what Cross was really saying. Humanity hadn't just won a war, they'd appointed themselves as the galaxy's protector of humanitarian values. Any species that threatened civilians, any government that murdered rescue workers, would face the full might of human military power. "The age of considering mercy a weakness is over," Cross continued. "Human civilization will ensure that rescue operations, medical personnel, and civilian evacuations are treated as sacred throughout this galaxy. Anyone who violates this principle will discover why compassion and overwhelming force are humanity's greatest weapons." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in contemplative silence. Chen looked around at the faces of her fellow officers, people who'd witnessed humanity's transformation from peaceful explorers to galactic enforcers in the span of a single day. "Captain," Maria Santos's voice came from behind her. The young colonist had been granted special permission to observe the surrender negotiations, representing the civilians whose lives had sparked this conflict. "Maria, how are the other survivors handling everything?" The young woman looked out at the debris field that had once been the hegemony's most powerful fleet. "They're grateful, Captain, but also frightened. We all saw what happened today, how quickly humanity went from rescue mission to total war. The children are asking questions we don't know how to answer." Chen understood. The rescue of the Meridian had succeeded, but at the cost of revealing humanity's true nature to the galaxy. They were no longer the peaceful, exploratory species that other civilizations had learned to dismiss. They were something far more dangerous, a species willing to wage war for humanitarian principles. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "incoming transmissions from multiple sources. The Altarian Republic is requesting military assistance with a pirate problem. The Vegan Collective wants to discuss mutual defense treaties. And sir, we're receiving surrender offers from 6 different species that weren't even involved in this conflict." Cross nodded grimly. Word travels fast. Every government in the galaxy now knows what happens when you threaten human civilians. Chen watched the tactical display as human ships began the process of recovering survivors from destroyed enemy vessels. Even in total victory, humanity's first priority was saving lives, including those of their defeated enemies. "Captain," Admiral Cross approached her personally, "I'm recommending you for promotion to Commodore and command of the new humanitarian protection fleet. Your actions today proved that humans can be both compassionate and ruthless when circumstances demand it." Chen looked out at the rescued colonists boarding transport ships, then at the debris field where thousands of alien crew members had died because their leaders chose to threaten innocence. "Admiral, what have we become? We've appointed ourselves as the galaxy's moral arbiters. What gives us that right?" Cross was quiet for a long moment, her weathered face reflecting the weight of command and the burden of victory. "Captain, what gave the hegemony the right to murder rescue workers? What gives pirates the right to attack civilian convoys? What gives any government the right to treat innocent lives as acceptable casualties?" She gestured toward the rescued colonists. "We have that right because we're willing to pay the price for it. We're willing to sacrifice our ships, our crews, our peaceful reputation to protect people who can't protect themselves. That's not imperialism, Captain. That's responsibility." Chen realized that Admiral Cross was right. Humanity hadn't sought galactic dominance. They'd been forced into it by species that mistook compassion for weakness. The galaxy now had a new reality. Any civilization that threatened innocence would face humanity's full military might. "Orders, Admiral. Begin establishment of humanitarian monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Any distress signal, any rescue operation, any threat to civilian populations gets immediate human response. We're not conquering the galaxy, Captain. We're making it safe for everyone who shares our values." As Chen watched the last of the colonists reach safety, she understood that the Battle of Meridian had changed everything. Humanity had revealed its true nature, not as peaceful explorers, but as a species that would fight total war to protect a single innocent life. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 months later, Captain Chen, now Commodore Chen, stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the Guardian's Promise, responding to a distress call from the Kepler sector. A merchant convoy was under attack by raiders, and the local government claimed they were too busy to respond. Her tactical officer reported, "The raider ships are demanding the merchants jettison their cargo or be destroyed." Chen smiled grimly. Pirates threatening civilian merchants, exactly the kind of behavior that humanity no longer tolerated. "All ships, this is Commodore Chen commanding the 3rd Humanitarian Fleet. Raiders will cease hostile actions immediately and surrender for processing, or we will interpret your actions as a threat to civilian lives." The response came quickly, "Human ship, this is not your territory. We are conducting legitimate salvage operations." Chen's expression hardened. Negative. You are threatening civilians. Under the Meridian Doctrine, that makes you our problem. She turned to her weapons officer. Target the Raider flagship. One shot across their bow to demonstrate our capabilities. The Guardian's promise fired a single particle beam that passed within meters of the lead Raider ship, close enough to overload their sensors and demonstrate that human targeting systems could have destroyed them instantly. The surrender signal came within seconds. All Raider vessels, this is their commander. We surrender to human authority. Please don't fire. Chen nodded with satisfaction. This was the new reality. Humanity's reputation preceded them now. The galaxy had learned that threatening innocent lives meant facing the species that had destroyed the mighty hegemony to save 4,000 to 7,000 strangers. Secure the raiders and escort the merchants to safety, she ordered. And send a message to the local government. The next time civilians call for help in their territory, they'd better respond. We're watching. As her ships moved to complete another successful rescue operation, Chen reflected on how much had changed since that desperate day when the Meridian sent out its distress call. Humanity had discovered its true calling among the stars, not as conquerors or explorers, but as the guardians of those who couldn't protect themselves. The galaxy was learning a simple truth. Humans would go to war without hesitation to protect a single innocent life. And they would win.